à tous. J'ai appris qu'on avait 5 minutes de moins, donc je vais.
I understand I have 5 less minutes to speak, so if my slides are available. Right, I want to speak to you. I don't know if I can talk about positive economy, but I can talk about very negative economy, and that's fishing in France. It's an area. There we go. My talk is how to step out of negative fishing economy. I allowed myself one slide, one plotted line. The rest are very lovely pictures. But here you can see how much we've lost in fish. The blue ones are the fishing stocks in the waters fished by the French fishermen. And in red, the number of fishing boats. And look, the stocks dropped in the last 50 years, but the fishing effort funded by public funding increased. And at one point, these curves crossed. And it's very difficult now to have fishing which is economically sustainable without support, financial support. And look at this, starting in the 80s and 90s, we hit the bottom of the curve in terms of fish. There are hardly any fish resources, but so many boats, so many horsepowers that are deployed. And so it's difficult to go and find this resource. And in the 80s and 90s, people decided to go further away and deeper to find the fish that were not there under the surface anymore. And so they sent large industrial boats out, representing huge investments, to go and find fish deeper and deeper in the sea, truly deep. And we went all the way down. At the beginning, it was 800, 900 meters depth, and then 1,000, 1,500, with all sorts of fishing methods that are very basic. It's depth trawling, in-depth trawling, huge nets that are drawn by trawlers. So you need a lot of fuel because you need a lot of energy, and so this is why you need subsidies. These huge nets are drawn all the way down to 2,000 meters in depth. They are drawn along the seabed. And here you can see everything is black, dark, there is no light. And you could expect that life isn't booming down there or teeming, which is not the case. And look what you catch, as you can see here in these huge nets that scrape the bottom. You have all these. They were called rat's tails, but who would eat rat's tails? So we call them all sorts of other lovely fish. You might know them. Maybe not. And you find them in the supermarkets, less and less, in fact, because Carrefour Casino have started to get rid of these fish that create a lot of problems in terms of environment. So for these 3 species that represent only 1% of fish catch, we throw back 100. All these are thrown back into the water. And they're sacrificed because they're dead by the time you throw them back. Because the problem is that these nets are not selective. These huge nets cannot target a given species. They're huge down on the bottom of the sea. They're 25 the footprint is about 100 meters, and they are drawn several hours per day, several days a year, for them to be profitable. And so all of these species that you catch and throw back, you have some that are already threatened with extinction. They will disappear from the face of the earth. Look at this is a shark. You don't think that there's so many sharks. These sharks, these deep sharks, I'm sorry, I'm not doing anything, but these pictures are moving forward. How can I go back? Okay, right. Don't look at the slides. Just look at me. So these sharks are on the bottom. They have a liver that has squalene. They contain squalene. Maybe ladies looked at their cosmetics, and there's squalene in cosmetics, and that comes from olives nowadays, which is the most virtuous approach, or from the liver of these sharks that live at the bottom of the sea. But when this in-depth fishing developed in the 90s, all these fish that we didn't know what to do with, we discovered that these, and these sharks particularly, had this liver full of squalene. And we did a worldwide study to show that these particular sharks are now captured everywhere worldwide for their liver that then is used in the cosmetic industry. So be careful. Don't buy Asian cosmetics because the squalene comes from an animal source, whereas in Europe now they use it from olives. So the impact of fishing is that there's a huge impact that we can't assess on fish. And then these huge nets that look like bulldozers catch coral. And corals, there are probably not many, but most of the coral in the ocean is in the depth, very depth. At the bottom of the sea, there are about 5,000 species of coral, and over half of them are in the dark depths of the sea, and they grow very, very slowly. And that is the characteristic of these animals that live way down, where there is no light. Food is connected to photosynthesis, and way down there they live very slowly, but they live very long, and their sexual maturity comes very late. And so these corals are caught in the nets and then thrown back overboard. It's as if you caught Egyptian mummies and threw them overboard, which is dreadful. And see on the edges, on the sides of this fish, there are large panels. These panels spread the nets so that these nets won't tangle. And these are the ones that catch the fish and scrape the bottom of the seabed. This is this animal. It's the longest living animal. It lives up to 4,200 years. So look, and this is what we're discovering. This was discovered in 2009, and every time you go underwater, you discover new things, new molecules, new things that are very interesting in scientific terms. But the problem is that once these trawlers have scraped the bottom, there's just a few traces and prints, and all of the life that was down there has disappeared. It was either crushed or milled or uprooted and sacrificed. So now we have a study that shows that the deep trawling fishing techniques have an impact, an yearly impact, which is 3,000 times greater than any type of other human activity, including oil extraction. So in scientific terms, this has been not banned, but it has been people have been telling everyone that this is the worst way of fishing, and so everybody has been screaming against it. And the researchers have offered their support very spontaneously to the European Commission. Now, the problem that we've encountered is that when you find all these animals, this is a picture of a sponge that lives way, way down low. They are adapted to a very hostile environment. It's dark, cold, there's nothing to eat. So how can they survive? They have molecules or cells that are very interesting for research, and particularly scientific cancer treatments in particular. We found new cures in these in-depth sponges. There are also some very nice stones that bring together life. And look at these different squid or octopus. These octopus stayed there. People fished or went deep sea diving, and they stayed there for 3 years. And it's after having laid their eggs 3 years later that they started moving. So year after year, people took pictures, and they were always there. And then look, we have no idea of the real impact on the animals who are between the bottom and the top. Those who are halfway between, how can they use this water? We don't know what they do. Maybe they use this bottom of the sea for laying their eggs. Look, these are animals who are very, very much in depth. This has just been described. Imagine, look, I didn't have fun with my daughter to give you a science fiction. No, look at the egg. It's see-through, tubular eyes. We just discovered this in California. They are just, they defy our imagination. They're a challenge to our imagination. This is the longest animal in the world. It's called a siphonophorus. It's like a gelatin, like a colony of jellyfish, 3 times longer than a blue whale. This is a picture I took on a research book on an American ship, and it's got octopus. The children call them Dumbo octopus. We don't know how they reproduced, and we discovered very recently this picture here. The researchers going at the bottom of the sea saw this with 1 egg, and they didn't know what was there, and they sacrificed the coral, brought that, and suddenly they saw it hatch. It's the only picture in the world of this little Dumbo octopus that was born in front of the researchers. They need the coral to be able to lay eggs, hatch, and survive. And this type of industrial fishing is subsidized in France. We are the country where the largest shipping fleet. There are only 11 that do this, over in-depth fishing over 3 days per year. And out of these 11 ships, 9 are French. This is why the French government is really against anything that could be done, but they subsidize it. And this type of fishing would not, and these difficulties would never have appeared if France had not subsidized this. We subsidized the building of these fish, and now they receive subsidies, huge subsidies every year. But they are not profitable. So this is a very unvirtuous cycle. Why are they not profitable? Because the main, it's Intermarché's retail brand, and they can buy and sell the fish. So they have a margin, make a lot of money in their shops, but this is the worst way of fishing in the world. This is why the European Commission has said we have a mountain of proof, scientific publications. And so in 2012, the European Commission suggested that this type of fishing would be prohibited. It doesn't make sense ecologically or economically. It costs us, it costs the environment, it will cost the future generations. And then in 2012, it sounded obvious, and we thought this would be solved very quickly, except the French fishing ministry, right from the beginning, started fighting the the European Commission, so that this project would not succeed, and so that the French fishermen could go on using those ships at a loss. The voting ballot will take place in October at the European Parliament, and will determine if yes or no we could be ambitious enough and try and put things straight again. All this is so costly, it is nonsensical. Can we politically be courageous enough to say there are things complex in the world? Look at the climate change. Everybody has to be in agreement, but deep sea fishing, there are 9 ships involved. Let's use the money for something else. And France is fighting, and it could be that they would fight. So by Liberation, the newspaper Libération, there's a double page on this, and we hope the NGOs can only fight through the media. That's all they can do. And then we have a petition going round on Bloom Association, so please do come and sign it, because we think it's the same thing. We think that petitions do serve. It's the only way that our citizen position can be given. And then I will not resist the temptation to talk to you about subsidies in general. It's something that within Bloom we want to talk about. The system shows that we lost fish, we over subsidized fishing capacity, we have too many boats, we don't have enough fish. How can we step out of this? Well, you need to double subsidies. This is what the MCO wanted to obtain. No, we need to ban these subsidies. All these subsidies do is encourage overfishing. And in the Nouvian LHFORUM, there's an incredible report. The Cour des Comptes published a report on how the state subsidies subsidize French fishing to know what is being done. The report is a bomb, so much so that Sarkozy or Hollande, whatever, they buried it. So the Nouvian LHFORUM found a copy of this report and published it on the 4th of July, 2013. And this bomb doesn't explode. This is what is incredible. We have an incredible report that says there's over 1 billion euros given to the fishing sector for a total turnover of 1.2 billion. In other words, we create operational conditions for fishing that are totally artificial. So let's backtrack. And the report said, except for industrial subsidies, because the subsidies are available, but most of these subsidies are not available. So the true subsidies are higher than the turnover. But then let's work on selective fishing, taking into account ecosystems and targeting employment. But the central government is not working on that. And so except for because if you put all subsidies together, it's 4 times the net turnover of the company. So fish is purchased at a lower cost than the production cost. Because if there were no subsidies, the net operational excess and net results of companies wouldn't be able to survive on the basis of these figures. And what is wonderful, what is incredible, is that now we are at the end of September, on the 23rd of October, at the European Parliament, a budget of 7 billion euros will be voted upon by our Eurodeputies on fishing subsidies. What is incredible, that Europe realized that to subsidize the building of trawlers is nonsensical. So they're not doing it anymore. And the rapporteur on the rules for subsidies of fishing is suggesting that subsidies for building new trawlers would be reintroduced. But we are in overcapacity. You remember the figures I showed you at the beginning of the conference. So 23rd of October, this vote will take place in France as usual. We'll push for this. The French deputies representing France at the Parliament. And so there are a lot of things that are taking place at European level. And we sometimes don't realize how much of an impact it can have on our daily basis. But look at this will have an incredible influence, a huge influence. And then the last quote, which is the major one as far as I'm concerned, it says that employment is always used to justify fishing. But best employment use is never present in any of the arrangements. This report says it all. We are in a situation where we don't have much correct data. Public funding and public goods such as fish, we don't have access to data on this. And so what we would like is data to be available so that we could at least look at them. even just talk about these questions in France on fishing subsidies, there's not one single university professor that will deal about and talk about that. There's an omerta. There's a complete ban. Nobody dares to talk about this. It's completely hush-hush. I think it is essential. NGOs supposedly should alert everyone. But it's true. We can talk. Others don't dare, but we can talk. So please sign our petition. This is one of the means that we have to try and get things interrupted. We could do so much better and so much more intelligently if we knew more about it.